Welcome back. You're still tuned in to Salam Media. This hour of news and views is sponsored by Africa Muslims Agency. Africa Muslims Agency, a beacon of hope to communities for over 35 years. We'll be looking into a very, very interesting story. I think the story jumped on me, I think, in the beginning of the week, where a really beautiful book was published by illustrator and author Natin Gubani, titled From the River to the Sea. It's a coloring book, which is an educational tool for children. And the book is an introduction to Palestine, focusing on the people, the history, its culture, and the struggle against occupation and settler colonialism. And ideally this would be something to celebrate, something beautiful. Further, I'm reassuring those connections South Africa has to South Africa, to Palestine. But then there was something interesting. The Cape Town Jewish Board of Deputies has called for the immediate cessation of this book, From the River to the Sea. And in a statement, the Cape Town Jewish Board of Deputies came and bombarded the author of the book, Natin Gubane, with a lot of messages and hate speech and threats, and also calling for the book to be taken down. And this is something that I don't think we should be discussing, particularly in South Africa in 2024. Back in the days of apartheid, most probably, where you'd have authors of books and, books being banned and books being taken off the shelves of stores. But yeah, it's happening right now. And we'll be speaking to the president of the South African Booksellers Association, Mohamed Kharwa. But what recourse do authors have when their books are being taken off the shelf? He's joining us via StreamYard. Brother Mohamed, really sad, disappointing story that we're seeing. As I mentioned before, I think this is something that would have made sense post, pre a democratic South Africa, not post democratic South Africa in 2024, where the right of one to read or write whatever material is enshrined in our constitution in the form of freedom of speech and expression. What can we make of this?
Assalamu alaikum to you and your audience. I would like to maybe start off by saying that today I'm going to be speaking in my personal capacity and not on behalf of the association or as the president of the association. I'm speaking as a bookseller. Somebody who understands the industry, somebody who's participated in conferences on free speech internationally. And to come to your point, it is a concern for me. And I think it should be for us as a society when we have a situation in South Africa in post apartheid, where at that point in time we had exceptional amounts of censorship, and we now are seeing a situation where booksellers are put under pressure, and issues are coming up around what is essentially a coloring book. Now, I think it's important for us to recognize that booksellers and any business will always have a choice in terms of what they want to keep. I think the concern from the public has been that this was something which was a reaction to what was posted, and during apartheid it was unfortunately common that booksellers would have to kind of keep things off the shelves, but I joked about it previously, and I said, booksellers were the original Twitter, where people would be able to share ideas. And books are a way of people to communicate. They're a way for people to share ideas, for people to learn about different views. And it's important that we allow that communication to happen. Every bookseller can't keep every book, and it's not always relevant to what their audience may be. But this is something which is current. It is an issue which, when we look at the book, it is about educating children. It's designed for, it actually could be used by adults. There are a lot of adults who do coloring in for relaxation. It has a small amount of commentary, but the content of the book talks to things like journalism. It talks to youth. It talks to women. It talks to the rights of freedom. It talks. It has murals and how that actually activism. So when we think about this, it's not there's nothing in here when I've looked at the book which and people should object to, especially when you consider that some of the bookstores that have had it and taken it off, or just bookstores in South Africa in general, will keep a wide range of books, including things like, you can walk into some of these stores or go online and you can order Hitler's Mein Kampf. You
Mm,
can order books which are very, very, controversial in different ways. But we see that a children's book, a coloring book of 30 odd pages, seems to have offended someone, when there is nothing there that actually infringes on anybody's values. It just presents something which you and I may not, or someone else may not agree with. I mean, I've walked into bookstores, and I do that regularly. I think it's an occupational hazard, and my wife finds it very frustrating. But I walk into bookstores and I look at what they have, and I consider what they have, and I've come across a number of bookstores who keep books which I may actually find offensive, or I might find that I believe are not reflecting what I think is the view that I would like to portray. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to go in there and tell booksellers in any way that they can't keep something. And this has severe implications for freedom of speech. It has severe implications for the sharing of ideas, for discussion, for debate. We have to consider that booksellers have a critical role in presenting ideas. Books are a way to actually share information, to put something out there, and it has a massive impact. We forget that just a few years ago, The President's Keeper,
mm,
which has become the best-selling book of all time in South Africa, changed South Africa dramatically. It was not something that was taken lightly. One of the bookstores were kind of under focus. They had to bring in extra security, but they took the decision to make sure that a different view and a voice is put out there, no matter what the risks. It happens elsewhere in the world. We've seen in some places in the world where booksellers have been abducted and disappeared for a period of time. Bookstores have been targeted, bookstores have been burnt. Things of that sort have happened across the world because they are a place where people share ideas, and we don't want that to happen in South Africa. Everybody should be able to have access to different views. We need to have diversity of voices. For a very long time, there has been discussion locally and globally that we don't have content that talks to our local audience, or to differences, whether it is issues around different races, around different ethnicities, around different languages. For a large part of the English speaking world, the bestsellers and the content still is driven from a very Eurocentric perspective. I think it was one of the Nigerian authors who presented some time back and said, she grew up reading books about blue-eyed, blonde-haired children playing in the snow and eating orange marmalade. And in Nigeria, you don't have those people. She never saw those people. There was no snow, and you ate mangoes and bananas. We need our children to read books that they can relate to, that they can see. We also need them to have to start tackling the challenges that they have to actually understand in a modern world that is completely connected. We cannot try and take things and just bring it down to TikTok videos and to WhatsApps and to short clips. There is an entire learning and an experiential process that comes from reading a book. You get a depth that you can't get from a short video, or even when something's made into a movie. The readers of the books will tell you, but they left so much out. And
mm,
that's, I think, what we need to address here is how and where do we respond to a situation where somebody puts out a call because they have issue with a really innocuous book. In fact, in some ways, for those who have objections to it, they've probably made it more popular, and they've actually raised the profile of this issue, which kind of you know makes it rather strange that this is what's happening. It also comes back into the question as to how and what booksellers are going to choose to keep on their shelves. Now, we as booksellers have a responsibility. Yes, we do have a commercial element. We need to obviously run a business and stay in business. But we also want to be able to present different views. And sometimes those views may not necessarily even agree with what we believe, but we have to be able to make sure that if someone comes in and requires something, that it is available, that it is fairly given an opportunity to be presented. It shouldn't be, hidden away in the back somewhere. It needs to be something that we be able to put, different views out there.
mm,
And this is not the most controversial content that some of the bookstores that have removed it have put out there. They've got very, very good broad context books. Using exactly the same name, for example, and we need to actually be able to encourage more discussion and debate and rational conversation, so we don't end up with situations like we've had in Durban recently, where people start turning to violence and aggression. We need a conversation to happen. And that conversation will only happen if people see, different parts of the story, if they're open to listening, and if we can actually engage with them. So,
mm,
we need to really think this through. It has serious repercussions if we allow this to kind of become a norm. Tomorrow, if someone writes a book about a politician, or someone else which has been through the process of being edited, being checked, going through checks and balances, validated. And if someone says, well, I don't like that because it's against a politician who I support, or a political party, or it talks to a subject that I am uncomfortable with, does that now mean that bookstores must remove those books from there as well? Or are we going to have a situation where some bookstores are going to decide for everyone what they must read? And that over there is not entirely what we should be encouraging in society. Libraries, media have a huge responsibility, and that responsibility is something which we must protect. Alhamdulillah, we are very fortunate that South Africa has got a very, very strong, constitutional right, and we have to this point had, whether it is media, whether it is our uh, journalists, tackled very, very complicated topics. We've had artists who've made paintings which have drawn court cases, and have protected some of those rights, even if we may be offended by it.
mm,
But there has to be somewhere that we talk about this, and we actually decide what and where we're going to draw the boundary. This isn't anything blasphemous. This isn't anything that is racist. It's not prejudiced. It just is something which presents very, very carefully and very sensitively, an issue that people may disagree with.
No, definitely. And you do mention, that we have a really, really strong, vibrant constitution. Recourse now, let's say a bookstore ultimately succumbs to this pressure to pull a book down on or off their shelves. And by the way, just as a disclaimer, we did invite exclusive books to come and chat to us. They haven't gotten back to us regarding this issue, but let's say it does happen. Let's say author pulls out a book, and then it's ultimately taken off the shelf because of um pressure, essentially from whatever group that might feel offended by it. What does an author or publisher have as a recourse, should that be the reality?
I think we have to also recognize that we're fortunate in the situation that there are options. The book's not banned by from the context of it's not going to be available anywhere, and we have to respect that booksellers will make choices that everybody does not agree with. I mean, I may have to make a choice on what I keep, or other booksellers may make choices on what they keep. But we have to also test that and say, what is the reasonableness of that decision? and where and how do we address it. We've got to recognize that you know, one incident does not define everything. We would like to be able to engage. It would be very, very, very useful if the booksellers who have pulled it, and it's not just one. I think we've got to recognize that it's a little bit broader than maybe one. Um, that we would like to have that conversation and understand what their reasoning is. Um, I don't want to prejudge what their thought process was. Um, I do want to be able to say that there are many other books out there that people need to be reading, and we need to actually encourage reading. I think we also have to look at that from the perspective of a commercial part of it. We can't expect bookstores to keep books and then nobody actually buys them and reads them, because otherwise, why do we have them, and why do we have authors who actually make the effort to write them as well? And we do have a very, very poor reading culture in South Africa. We have a very, very poor book buying culture in South Africa, and we need to also address those things. So we don't want to have a situation where we kind of turn this completely against someone. This is an opportunity for us to have a conversation, for us to engage, for us to look at what and how we come to this as a society. How we actually deal with disagreement, and what is our responsibility from a perspective of presenting different ideas, and to be open to that. We've got to have tolerance, and sometimes that tolerance means that we will have to tolerate things that we don't always subscribe to, but then others need to also tolerate views that we do subscribe to. So I think that this is a much bigger issue, of how we're going to move going forward. We know that currently across the world, whether it is at universities, whether it is in corporate space, whether it is in companies, there's been a very, very loud voice about what is happening in specifically relating to this book in Gaza. Um, and that's not something which we should actually be trying to shy away from. If we don't talk about something, it doesn't mean that it's going to go away. It doesn't mean that we can plead ignorance, or we can plead that we are blind to what is happening. We have to have those conversations. They're tough conversations. They're conversations that people don't want to have or don't like to have, but it has to happen. And we've got to be able to also present this from a perspective of not just one narrative. We've got to be able to let other voices be heard. We're seeing this through, various different formats, on the internet, on podcasts, etc. We've got to have very, very calm, collected, rational discussion, but that discussion cannot be suppressed. That discussion cannot be one which is dictated by any one party because they don't like it. And it would be something which we need to address very, very urgently, and we've got to be able to challenge that. Authors, what is their options? Well, they've always got to look at where the channels are. Yes, like with anything, we want it to be right in front where the person can reach it and access it. Fortunately, I think the internet is there. While our business doesn't normally keep a lot of coloring books, we've taken the decision that on the basis of being able to make sure that something is available, we will put it onto our online store. So you can order it online from wherever you are in the country or the world. So I think that that's something which we need to do. But we do need to be able to, the authors will have to actually acknowledge and have to address this, and make decisions as to what and how they're going to take this forward. Um,
No.
I think there's a lot that we need to discuss beyond this as well. You know, why and what that decision was, and who makes the decision. One of the other things is how books are chosen, especially among many of our chain stores in South Africa, is they do give the store managers and the people who are on the ground a lot of leeway to make decisions because they are the people who know what people walking into their store want.
Mm.
Sometimes, though, yes, they may make decisions that the company may not agree with, but at other times, the company may make decisions that may not necessarily be in the interest of the store. And then what happens is that we now are having a situation where when the public wants to buy something, in a particular area, and it varies dramatically. There will be a very different profile to the books that might be kept, in Cape Town and Durban and in Gauteng, or even within a city, because of the audience that comes there. But we need to grow the accessibility of books. We already have had the challenge where booksellers in South Africa are under immense pressure because of the poor book buying culture, because of competition, and because of policy from government as well, and the poor reading culture. And we're seeing bookstores close across the country. Um, but we need people to have trust in their bookstores, and we need people to support them. And we need people will only support them if what they see when they go into the bookstores relates to them. And very,
Definitely.
very, yeah.
Unfortunately, I have to stop you there, Brother Mohammed. I think you've laid it down beautifully for us. We have run out of time, but I think, really, really giving beautiful insights there about the recourse and just exactly what goes into ultimately what you find on your shelves when you walk into a bookstore. I think there's a story we're going to be following closely, and I'm sure we'll be chatting to you in the near future. Jazakallah so much for giving us your time.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Jazakallah, for the opportunity. Assalamu alaikum to you and your audience.
Walaikum salam. That was Mohamed Kharwa there, speaking to us about what recourse do authors have when their books are being taken off the shelf. We did see that statement coming from the publishers of From the River to the Sea, a coloring book illustrated by Natin Gubane, where certain groups are putting pressure on bookstores to pull the book down from their shelves. Really, really disappointing story. This is a beautiful book. And all the proceeds do go to the people of Gaza who are currently surviving an ongoing genocide. So, yeah, I think interesting story. We'll try and, get one of the big book selling chain stores in South Africa to comment on this issue and to check if they are keeping the book on their shelves and they're not succumbing to that pressure, which is censorship in all of its might. It's censorship. It's also, denying freedom of speech and freedom of expression, something that should be left at the corridors of apartheid, not in the new South Africa. Here we read and write what we want, as long as it doesn't infringe on another person's rights. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, it's Hajj Diaries 2024. We'll be doing a live crossover to Makkah. We'll be chatting to Safira Kaka, who's a presenter at CII Radio, and she'll be sharing with us her excitement and anticipation for Hajj 2024. More on that after the break.